I am Cheyenne Hollis, this is The Touchback, and right now I find myself in Seoul, South Korea. Okay, technically it's Incheon, but I don't have time to get caught up in all of those semantics. That's because I am here to see 5 sporting events across 4 days. The schedule is tight. We've got KBO, we've got a little K-League soccer in there. Can I make it? Can I do it all? We'll see. Now, I know some of you out here are probably watching this and going, Cheyenne, you look shittier than normal. And you know what? That is a fair point. I have been traveling all night to get here. I haven't slept in God knows how long. I'm exhausted. I feel gross. It's that classic, you've been on a flight forever and you just want to take a shower and a nap. And with that in mind, I'm going to go over to my hotel. It's about 9:30 a.m. in the morning. I'm going to go try to see if I can get an early check-in to my hotel so I don't feel miserable all day. In the meantime, while I make that journey, here's a voiceover from me, more refreshed, more lucid, and better able to explain just what the hell's going on here in South Korea.
With a bunch of airline miles set to expire earlier this year, I booked a ticket to Seoul, originally planning to attend the Seoul Series between the Dodgers and Padres. However, the ticketing shortcomings of that contest meant it wasn't really possible to get in, so I pivoted to a more Seoul-centric sports trip a few months later. This final weekend in May just happened to be the motherlode. The Kiwoom Heroes had a Thursday night home matchup at the Geochoek Sky Dome. Friday saw the Incheon SSG Landers play at home. Saturday offered a KBO K-League doubleheader with the LG Twins and Incheon United playing, while Sunday was a KT Wiz home game before a Sunday night flight out of South Korea. As someone who loves maximizing sports trips to get as many games as possible in a short amount of time, for me, it did not get any better than this lineup. Now, it was not going to be easy, but I had to give it a shot. Things did not get off to the best of starts as there was no room at the inn for an early check-in, and I had to spend some time sort of sleepwalking around. Right there with you, buddy, me too. As the evening approached, though, I made my way to Seoul.
First up on the agenda is a trip to the Geochoek Sky Dome to see the Kiwoom Heroes take on the NC Dinos. This venue, of course, is known by MLB fans as being the host of the Seoul Series between the Dodgers and Padres back in March. It's certainly an interesting dome. It only seats about 16 and change attendance-wise, so it's basically around the same size as your typical NBA or NHL arena, but it's obviously a bit bigger than that. It is a dome stadium with baseball, so it's going to be interesting to go inside and experience what will be my very first KBO game as well. But before we can do any of that, we need to get some tickets.
That was easy. Let's go inside.
So my first impression of the Geochoek Sky Dome is that it's such a weird dichotomy of different things. It's pretty small. It's 16,000 seats, or 16,000 and some change, as I said earlier. So it's roughly the size of, say, like a Sutter Health Park in Sacramento. It's a AAA stadium size, but it feels a lot bigger than that with the slanting on the seats, the upper deck, even the upper deck in the outfield. There's a very largeness to it, a steepness to it that gives it a very much a major league feel. And it's very, even now I'm trying to describe it to you, and there's nothing quite like it. You know, I've been to the Tokyo Dome, I've been to the Osaka Dome, or whatever corporate name that has, and those feel monstrous. They feel like big old domes. And this feels almost like they put a baseball stadium into a traditional arena. I mean, it still has the height, of course, to it, but there's definitely an intimacy here that you don't really see with any baseball stadium in America.
For KBO games, you will notice that home fans take up the first base side, while away fans can be found on the third baseline, usually congregating behind the dugouts. This means there's always action no matter where you sit. You don't have to feel as if you're missing out on something if you pick one side over the other. It really just goes down to who would you like to support on this evening. If your preference is to just go and watch, then maybe the outfield or behind home plate are for you, where both sets of fans just sort of intermingle.
They say once you get into the bullpens of a KBO game, anything can happen, and that was certainly the case tonight as the NC Dinos scored 1 in the 7th, 2 in the 8th to tie the game at 4, only to lose the lead by allowing 2 runs in the bottom of the 8th. I had a blast. This was a lot of fun, a great game, and just the atmosphere. It wasn't a sellout, but there was a lot happening. It was loud, And I had a blast. I really enjoyed myself this evening, and it's really set the bar pretty high because I've got 4 more sporting events to go. Look, I'm exhausted right now. I'm ready to go to bed. So I got a 30-minute train ride, and then I'm finally catching some much-needed sleep. Then I will see you bright and early tomorrow as we have another baseball game ahead of us.
I began Friday with a trip to a restaurant my wife and I stumbled upon during one of our trips to Seoul. We really love this place. Unfortunately, they don't do our favorite, the grilled pork belly, during lunch, but still loved it. Still a great meal. Being in this part of Seoul also meant I get to pass the only Quiznos I have seen in the past 15 years. Seriously, every time I come to this city, I end up walking past this very Quiznos, stop and take a photo of it, and remark to myself about how I can't remember seeing any other Quiznos in the world apart from this one. Enough about that. It's time to go back to Incheon.
I'm taking a quick coffee break here in Incheon, and let's talk tickets. Getting tickets to KBO games, K-League games, any sporting event in Korea. How do you do it? Well, if you're an American or from overseas, you go into the box office at the stadium and day of. That's really your only solution here. While there are a few different online ticket service providers here in South Korea, day of sales are still a big thing here. Going to the ticket office the day of the game, just walk upstairs, is still very prominent part of the culture, both here and in Japan. So for a lot of people coming from overseas like myself, there's always that concern, is the game gonna sell out? You know, if I wanna get my tickets ahead of time just so I know I can make plans, and you can't do that. It's just not possible here. Unless you have, like I said, a Korean identification number, you can't sign up for any of those services. Now, that being said, sellouts, while they do happen from time to time, they're pretty rare, all things considered. Only the biggest of big matches sell out. I wish I had better news for you on that front, though, if you are someone who likes to meticulously plan your trips, but it just doesn't work out that way. You've got to sort of be flexible, go with the flow. If a game's happening on the day you're there, go to the stadium. Most ticket offices, they open about 2 hours to 90 minutes ahead of time, so get there as early as possible, wait in line, and hopefully you snag tickets. In most cases, you'll be okay. I mean, there may be a few exceptions where a game does sell out, but quite frankly, you should be okay. Don't call me on that, though.
After a day of roaming, it was time to carry on with this little adventure.
All right, it is time for game number 2, and that brings me to Incheon Landers Stadium, otherwise known as Moonbok Baseball Stadium. It's part of a larger complex, which includes Incheon World Cup Stadium. I'm actually standing on the steps leading up to one of the gates. For soccer fans, you'll know that as the venue that saw South Korea upset Portugal. For Americans, though, that result actually meant sure we backdoored our way into the quarterfinals. We're not here to talk about soccer, though. We're here to talk about baseball. As you can see, it's a fairly large stadium. It's got a huge scoreboard. The big difference between last night and tonight is obviously we are outdoors. It is a beautiful spring day here in Seoul. The weather is just right, although it may get a little chilly as night falls. I'm looking forward to just seeing how the stadium plays. It's bigger than the Geochoek Sky Dome. It is obviously, as I mentioned, outdoors, and it looks like the vibe, the crowd, it's going to be a little bigger than what we saw last night, Thursday, weekday night. Those crowds tend to be a little smaller across the KBO, and this game also features the Hanwha Eagles, a hugely popular team, perennial losers, but people still love them anyway. So you know what? I actually already have my ticket in hand. I guess the next thing to do is go inside and check it out.
The first thing I saw after entering Incheon Baseball Stadium was rather shocking. A Papa John's. Days later, and the pizza place's presence still confuses me, but you know what? Let's not get sidetracked on that.
As far as backdrops go, baseball stadium or otherwise, I must say having a World Cup stadium behind you is pretty freaking sweet. You don't see that every day. So as for Landers Stadium, or SSG Landers Stadium, the capacity is 23,000, a little above that. Has a lot of similarities with other KBO stadiums, heavily slanted seats. A lot of the areas behind home plate focused on table seating, more premium seating. There are some luxury boxes here, but overall, the experience is fan first for all fans. You bring in your own food, bring in your own drinks, cheer for your team, focus on baseball, things that occasionally feels like we've lost in Major League Baseball, where those clubs are so worried about extracting as much value as possible from the ordinary fan that you forget that you just want to go and watch baseball and do so regardless of your budgetary concerns. I mean, you see people out here just bringing in water. I mean, yesterday I saw a guy just had a soda bottle full of beer. He brought that into the stadium, and it gives it a little different vibe here where it's more fun. And as I said, it's fan first. And to me, that's something maybe we don't necessarily have in America. So it's refreshing to see, once again, a more, I guess you could say, pure form of watching a baseball game.
There was another reason I was excited for this game. Reno's own Drew Anderson was starting for the Landers, which meant I had to sit in the home section and cheer him on. Shout out Reno. It would not be his best start as he gave up 6 earned runs over 4 innings. As for Landers Stadium, I really liked this venue, perhaps the most of all the places I stopped by on my trip. Great crowd, unique backdrop, just a lot to appreciate here. It's a bit of a shame they will be moving in a few years' time, although that stadium will either be really cool or really ridiculous. In fact, that is a topic for another video at another time. The game itself was totally wild, and if that wasn't enough excitement for one game, there was a post-game dance party. No, seriously, but Baby Shark here? Well, that's certainly a choice.
The game has ended here with the Eagles beating the Incheon Landers 7-5 in one of the more wild games of baseball I've ever seen in person. Just a lot happening, a lot going on, an absolute fun game to watch, great atmosphere. Right now there's like a post-game rave happening. I'm not even kidding about that. It's one of the more remarkable sights I've ever seen take place after a baseball team, especially considering the home team lost and people are still out here partying. So day 2 is in the books. We've got 2 KBO games in the books. Tomorrow is the doubleheader. We're going to do a little baseball in the afternoon and then K-League soccer. I don't actually know if I can make both games. It's a bit of a time crunch. I think I can do it. I think I have the time and math worked out, but I guess we'll find out tomorrow. And speaking of tomorrow, that is when I will see you. I am starting my day with one of the most authentic Korean experiences you can have, hanging out at the convenience store, having a nice Monster energy drink, no product placement fees here, and just eating some breakfast. If you've never been to Korea, then you might not understand the role convenience stores play, because it's absolutely fascinating to me. And of course, if you have been here, you already get it. Or even if you watch Korean dramas, you'll see the sort of role the convenience store has in everyday life. But these are more than just a place selling various goods. They're a hangout spot. They are an integral part of life for many people here in South Korea, and in particular Seoul. It's just, you can get everything here. You just come, you drink your beer outside, there's seating areas. It is just something to experience in and of itself while you're traveling here. And so I know for Americans, they'll say, oh, why aren't you eating at restaurants? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And I mean, this is as much as the culture as anything else here in Korea. So it's something that you should definitely take in. And honestly, like, I could spend hours in these convenience stores because there's so much fascinating stuff here. But I'm not going to get sidetracked on spending all my time today in a convenience store because we have 2 sporting events to get to. We start at Seoul Baseball Stadium for another KBO game, and then we will end this evening at Incheon Football Stadium for a K-League game. Interestingly enough, as you know, yesterday I was at the Incheon World Cup Stadium, but that is not where Incheon United play. That stadium, that facility was deemed too big for the K-League side, and they moved down the road to a new stadium in 2012, and I will be checking that out today. So if you excuse me, I have a nice convenience store meal to get to, and I will see you a little later on this afternoon.
As I make my way to Seoul Baseball Stadium, let's talk about getting around Seoul and the surrounding areas. It is really quite easy. What you want to do when you first arrive to Seoul is get one of the many transit cards available. I got a T-Money card on this trip, but there were several others out there, and they all operate similarly. You load the card with money, and then you can use it to ride the subway or metro trains, buses. You can pay taxis with it. Heck, you can even use it to pay at convenience stores. Simply tap the card when you enter, tap as you're leaving, and that's that. Reloading your card is simple as well. It can be done at just about any convenience store or at various train stations. It's a great system, although it won't stop you from getting on the wrong train, but more on that later, because this is my stop.
Welcome to Seoul Baseball Stadium here in the middle of Seoul. Stadium number 3 on this tour of Seoul sporting events. This is the largest baseball stadium in South Korea with 25,000 or so seats. It actually underwent an extensive renovation about 5 years ago or so, where they pumped in some money just to make it look a little newer, a little nicer. Although on the outside, you definitely get some of the old stadium vibes, Oakland Coliseum-esque. It's concrete, it's large, it's a little, I guess you could say, cavernous in certain places. That being said, it is an extremely popular venue here with the fans of the Twins and the Bears. Today, those Twins are the home team. They're taking on the NC Dinos. This will be the second time I've seen the Dinos on this sojourn here in South Korea. So what are we waiting for? I need to go buy a ticket, and then let's go inside.
Before we get to the game, I think it's time for an important public service announcement as it relates to food at Korean baseball games.
Anytime you see a foreigner doing a video about going to a KBO game, they like talk on and on about the food and this, that, and the other, how it's so much better than American ballpark food. And let's get one thing straight here. It's okay, it's Korean food, it's different. I don't know if it's anything particularly better as far as quality-wise. I mean, anything you get in and around the ballpark is average Korean food. I mean, again, let's just be honest here, let's be frank. It's cool, I guess, that you have so many options, and of course you can always bring in your own food to the stadium, but again, I think you need to be realistic with what to expect here. But I'm going to give you a pro tip. What is served at most ballparks here is not particularly easy to eat. You're using chopsticks, stuff like tteokbokki, bibimbap, stuff like that. Eating that at your seat is just going to be a pain in the ass. So the pro tip is this. Find a nice ledge or something somewhere around the ballpark, pop up, eat, and there you go. Here we are, another stadium in the books. This one, Seoul Baseball Stadium. This definitely feels bigger than some of the other venues I have visited so far. It does kind of blow my mind that MLB didn't host their Seoul Series here. I understand the weather was a thing and whatnot, but still, this is a pretty large stadium. A lot more seating, a lot more potential here, although I guess there's less premium seating than in the Geochoek Sky Dome. But it looks like there's going to be a pretty big crowd out. It's a beautiful Saturday afternoon, which usually means in the KBO you're going to get a big crowd. So let's see what's in store today between the NC Dinos and the Twins.
The game itself was not particularly competitive as the Twins were just keeping the Dinos at a pretty decent distance. It was, however, taking a little longer than I had hoped for. In fact, I started to get a little anxiety, a little panicked over the time as the game just slowly chugged along. So much so that I rushed out of the stadium to catch the train right after the final pitch.
So a quick update. The game ended like 3 hours and 28 minutes or so. So I have about 90 minutes to get from Seoul to Incheon Stadium. The train I'm actually supposed to be on is arriving now, so you're going to walk and talk with me. But basically, the game hit the window I have to get to the Incheon football stadium on time. I'm going to be really close. I hope to get there for kickoff. We'll see if I make it. I'm not 100% sure, but I got to train the board, guys, so I'll catch you later.
Oh, you poor fool. That turned out to be the wrong train. Well, the right train, but the wrong offshoot. It's all a bit complicated.
So, it looks like I didn't get on the wrong train, per se, but the line 1 here in Seoul, it takes a few different branches. It goes on a few different paths. And the one I got on did not go where I thought it was going to go. Quite frankly, I thought I was on point, but the train was butt to nut packed, so I couldn't really figure out what was going on, and I couldn't necessarily get the internet on my phone to double check directions until it was too late, and I was already going to the station I didn't want to get to. So now, definitely going to be late to the Incheon United game. I don't really know what to say, kind of annoyed right now, but it is what it is. More trains to come. Eventually I'll get there, hopefully by the start of the second half, I guess.
In hindsight, maybe I should have hailed a taxi, but that's just not my style. It took a while, but I did eventually make it to Incheon Football Stadium, and I was just in time for this halftime performance. Suffice to say, I didn't know what the hell was going on. Not only was there a smooth jazz concert playing, but the supporter section was entirely empty. It would not be until later I would find out that a bunch of drama had gone down at Incheon United's last home game, a derby clash against FC Seoul. That saw fans throw a bunch of water bottles on the field, and it was a bit of a K-League scandal. Many fans were banned by the club, and that section was closed down as a result of the actions. Even with what was a somewhat subdued atmosphere, I thought everything was pretty good at the Incheon United game. Then again, I was just happy to be there. The home team gave up a goal early in the second half only to get a last gasp stoppage time equalizer from a penalty that was basically the last kick of the game. It must also be said, K-League soccer probably doesn't get the respect it deserves globally.
I made it. I can't believe I made it. Honestly, it was looking pretty bleak there for a minute as I was in train hell, but I got here. And I'm not even the worst fan tonight. Someone came up and bought tickets after me. So you know what? I was up there in the running, admittedly, for being the worst fan, but I was not last, so there's that. As far as Incheon Football Stadium, my first impression is that it's remarkably similar to America First Field in Salt Lake City. And I mean it, well, Sandy, Utah, sorry. But I mean that as a compliment. I think that's a really well done stadium, has a really good atmosphere. And I felt very much the same way about Incheon Football Stadium. Very nice design. The main difference between the two stadiums is that the Incheon roof goes all the way around, whereas the America First Field roof is only on the insides of the venue there. But yeah, it was a great atmosphere, very fun. Not a big crowd tonight, but a lively one at that. Of course, the last minute equalizer, always helps in that regard. And you know what? I'm happy I made it. I'm happy I got in. That was, yeah, like I said, that was close. 4 out of 4 so far. I've hit everything, even the doubleheader. And I think there's only one more stop I want to make tonight. So why don't you come with me? It's been a blast so far, but we got one more thing we need to do tonight. We'll end today just like we started today, right at the humble convenience store. In this case, we're at Nice to See You, but there's really so many all over South Korea, and they mostly function in the same manner. Let's talk about doubleheaders, doing sports doubleheaders though. So today didn't quite go as I planned. In reality, I should have known better. I've tried to do multiple sports doubleheaders over the years. In 2017, I did a New York Jets home opener in the US Open final. In 2019, I did a TCU home game and an Oklahoma home game. Last year for the NFL, I did an Eagles home game against the Commanders, and then I did Sunday Night Football with the New York Jets. And just about every time this has ever happened, something goes wrong. Like that TCU game went into overtime. That Eagles-Commanders game, the first game of the doubleheader, went in the overtime. I've seen 2 overtime games, football games, live in person, and they were both the 2 games I didn't want to go to overtime. And you can't leave an overtime game, like football, whatever sport. You want to stay to see an overtime game. However, anytime I do one of these doubleheaders, something happens, something I don't expect, something I don't plan for. I'll look at the times, I'll see the distances. Mathematically, scheduling wise, it makes sense, but then you just end up on a wrong train, making a mistake, doing something dumb. That's also though part of the whole experience of being abroad too. You don't speak the language, you don't always know everything, and in my defense, there are Koreans who don't fully understand the public transport system here. I'm not the only one to be mystified by it. And you know, you could get pissed or angry or whatever the case may be, and honestly, it's just part of the, like I said, it's part of the experience, it's part of being abroad. I've known people to get the AM and PM on their flights wrong when they were in Europe. Like, you just make mistakes like this and you just sort of, maybe you learn from it, but really you just sort of go with the flow. And today, going with the flow, it got me both games in the doubleheader. I was late to the Incheon United game, but what are you going to do? What is really starting to hit me now, the gravity of my situation tomorrow, is that I'm going to Suwon, which is another suburb city of Seoul, to see a KBO game there. And then I got to haul ass back to the Incheon International Airport. I don't have a huge window here. That game starts at 2 p.m. local time. I need to be at the airport no later than 7:30, so I'm getting a little worried right now. We'll see how it goes. I have hope it all goes well, but after what happened today, it's looking a little dicey, but you know what? We'll figure it out tomorrow, or I guess we'll see tomorrow, if that matters. So again, thank you for joining me on day 3. We've got 4 games in the book. Now I'm gonna have this Skippy peanut butter chocolate bar. This is like one of my favorite things in South Korea. This is just so amazing. So until next time, until tomorrow, I guess I'll see you then. Final day in South Korea. I am on my way to Suwon KT Wiz Park to see the final KBO game, the final sporting event on my tour here. There is, I don't want to say good news and bad news, there's news and bad news. The news is that I think I can time everything out from getting to the ballpark, to my hotel, to pick up my luggage, to the airport, and catch my flight. I've never missed a flight before, don't plan on starting today. The bad news, it's likely to rain here. In fact, the forecast says around 100% chance of rain starting around 2 to 4 o'clock, which is of course when the baseball game is being played. So that's kind of a bummer, but we're gonna see how it goes. First up though, I'm getting some coffee.
Nothing like an American ordering a Dutch latte in South Korea. Globalization may not be perfect, but it certainly has its perks. My plan to bus to this game hit a snag when the bus never showed up. Apparently, there was a route change or something that Google Maps hasn't registered. This meant I had to book it to the train station, but everything worked out in the end.
So I finally made it to Suwon KT Wiz Park after all of my public transit misadventures once more. If you cannot tell, it is most definitely raining, and the rain's starting to get pretty heavy. I'm sure the umbrellas in the background are a bit of a dead giveaway. I'm not sure if we're gonna play ball here. Man, it's starting to come down pretty badly. Anyway, as for this stadium, it was heavily renovated in 2013 as the city of Suwon looked to regain its KBO team. It had previously had the Hyundai Unicorns in 2007. I will tell you more about that in a voiceover because I need to get some cover.
As for KT Wiz Park, it underwent extensive renovations as the city looked to regain a KBO expansion franchise. That happened in 2013, and the renovations included the creation of an upper deck. In fact, the before and after photos here are pretty astounding when you think of what the stadium was and now what it is today. As for the weather, well, a radical transformation was not forthcoming.
Remember last night when I said, whatever you don't want to happen, the worst case scenario for you is what usually ends up happening? Well, I present to you Exhibit A, my first ever baseball rain delay. Honestly, it's pretty wet. I don't know if this game's gonna start, when this game's gonna start. My time frame is I can be here until 6. I can't stay after 6, so I'm just gonna tough it out and see if the weather does subside. Overall, my first impressions, this is a pretty kick-ass stadium. It has some of the old charm of baseball. You know, it's very concrete. The layout is very old school, but they've done a lot with the different areas, especially in the outfield with the different seating areas. You know, behind home plate, there's obviously some premium seating. You've got some luxury boxes around the stadium, and then over in left field, it's just sort of these grass steps. It's a really cool facility that I think sort of blends in different elements to create a very unique look to it. Now, how's the vibe gonna be? I don't know, and I don't know if I'm gonna see it today, but yeah, let's see if we get this rain to pass.
With rain still falling, I headed over to one of the stadium's more unique features.
It's not all bad, I suppose. Suwon KT Wiz Stadium does have this excellent little coffee shop in the right field corner. In fact, I don't know if you can see it, but there is the right field pole there. So I'm just sort of chilling here, waiting out the weather. I don't know how much longer I have to wait, but it does seem to be still some time. However, this is pretty unique. I know you see a lot of stadiums in America that do have sort of restaurants, facilities, stuff like that in their confines, but this one was actually pretty affordable for starters. That's always a big thing. And then access to everyone. You can come in and surprisingly not busy. If this was the States and there was a rain delay, this place would be absolute butt to nut, just like the Korean metro. Anyway, still in a rain delay here. Will I see baseball? I don't know.
The wet weather continued on for, I'd estimate, like a half hour. I just hung out, drank coffee, and hoped my shoes would dry out. They never did, and the rain never stopped.
Well, on the pro side, I no longer have to worry about missing my flight. That means the con is this game is canceled. It is what it is. You know, when you travel, when you go to different countries, when you try new experiences, these things happen. But kind of a bummer, and I'm taking some serious damage. It is really getting wet out here. So I'm going to go catch a bus, to catch a train, to catch a plane, and I will guide you along the way.
Naturally, not being in a rush meant getting back to my luggage happened in a quick and timely fashion. As I make my way to the airport, why don't we go over the prices, just how much everything cost on my trip? I never sprung for expensive tickets, which kept my expenses surprisingly low. In fact, I saw all 5 games in Seoul or the surrounding areas for less than $50. That is pretty freaking awesome. As for transportation, I put 25,000 Korean won on my card throughout the trip, and you do need to add in an extra 5,000 won for the card itself, which is non-refundable. So altogether, that's roughly $22. For that, I easily cleared 100 miles during my trips around the greater Seoul region. Finally, I stayed near Suwon Station in Incheon, which is not exactly a popular tourist destination. However, it was close to both Incheon stadiums, and it was easy to get to both Seoul and the airport from this location. The hotel ran me $126 for 3 nights, and the hotel itself was pretty nice. It had a massage chair, which I liked, so no complaints there. For basically everything, not including airfare or food and drinks on this trip, I spent under $200. Not bad at all. Returning to the journey to the airport. So I actually grabbed my luggage from the hotel when the bus never showed up and used one of the luggage lockers at the train station, which I knew I'd be passing through regardless. This move would have saved me some time in theory, but that of course was a moot point at the end of the day. After 4 days and 3 nights, I found myself back at Incheon International Airport, ready to conclude this epic Seoul sports trip.
This trip comes to an end much in the same way like it began. Me at the airport, exhausted and looking like shit. You know what though? It was all completely worth it. I had a total blast. Now, I'll level with you. I did not do 5 games in 4 days. It didn't happen. The mission I set out to accomplish was a failure. Of course, it wasn't all my fault. I can't do anything about the rain delay, but hey, it happened, and you know, that's just part of traveling. It's the experience of going abroad. Shit's gonna happen. You never know what to expect. And yeah, hey, my first ever rain delay, my first ever baseball game rain cancellation, and it happened right here in Seoul. As for Seoul, as a sporting destination, I was blown away. You know, I've been around the world. I've seen all types of stadiums, done stupid trips like this pretty frequently. And I had some expectations for Seoul and Incheon and Suwon and all of it, and it just absolutely surpassed everything I was expecting. I had a ton of fun at all the games, great experiences all around, and it's not quite up there with Japan for me. Like Japan, as far as a sporting destination, right up there. You know, if you've watched this channel, I'm desperate to get to Australia one of these days, and all of the Europe trips I've taken over the years and seen soccer games, they're all wonderful, but Seoul's right up there with them. Baseball, soccer, there's other things here happening. You know, you don't have to go balls to the wall like me, catching 4 games in 4 days. You can sneak in a baseball game or a soccer game while you're here visiting the sights and sounds and all of the wonderful things about South Korea. In fact, I'm only scratching the surface. As I mentioned, I only stayed in a small part of the country. There are other venues in the South. Like I want to go see the Pohang Steelers play at Estadio Steelyard. There are some excellent KBO stadiums elsewhere in the country that would be fantastic to visit. No doubt I'm coming back here to see more baseball, more soccer, and who knows what else they have happening. So all things considered, excellent trip. Seoul has treated me right. Incheon, Suwon, whatever you want to call it, just fantastic. I've got nothing but great things to say, and I highly recommend it. Like I said, if you're thinking about taking a trip and you want to get a little sports in there, South Korea is the place to go. With all of that in mind, I got a flight to catch. So if you'd like to see a little bit more about my various stadium experiences over the years, well, the playlist is either on the right or the left-hand side of your screen. And in one of the top-hand corners is going to be the comparison of going to a Jets and Giants game at MetLife Stadium. Until next time, I am Cheyenne Hollis. This is The Touchback. It has been very real, Seoul. Absolutely enjoyed my time here. And as always, hashtag take it out to the 25.